Hi everybody, today for ArtTales we're going to read The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying, as if they needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railroad the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. And over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway. Those look like daisies. You can see he's in the city because look at all the buildings behind him. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. Look at that. Can you tell what that was? It's missing its wheels. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Okay, look very carefully. Can you tell what was underneath there? How about there? Look what that's growing on. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising thing that popped up were the new gardeners. Look, these are all the other rooftops around town. Look at all the people that are starting to garden. And that's called a topiary, when a bush is trimmed into the shape of something. Can you tell what those animals are? Many years later, the entire city has blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. Look at all over the city, all the rooftops have gardens. The end. All right, right, so we just finished reading The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. And for our art activity today, if you've been joining us in the past weeks, we're trying to do things that don't need special supplies that you'd have to go and buy. So we're just using pencil and paper today. And the one I wanted to focus on that I thought would be kind of fun. So in the story, there's a little boy that starts a garden, and then other people see his garden and they start making their own rooftop gardens. It's a really gray, kind of gloomy city. And towards the end of the story, we see all these people are using their rooftops to make gardens. I really love this illustration, and this is almost what we would call a bird's eye view. So bird's eye view, just like it sounds, is the idea if you were a bird and you were flying over, what would you see? Same thing if you're in an airplane and you're flying over and you look down. So if you were a bird and you were just a little bit above and you're looking at the top of this roof, that would be a bird's eye view. So I thought that'd be fun to draw today. So I'm gonna draw, I'm not gonna try to copy that. We never try to copy, but I'm gonna draw the rectangle of the top of my roof. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right. And I could make that bigger if I wanted. But that's the top of my roof. And then I'm gonna come back later and draw the side of my building. But right now, just kind of got the outline. But right now, here's my top of my roof. And I love how, if you look at this picture, it almost looks like a quilt. You can see all the different shapes. It's like there's a little patch there that's just grass. And then he has a little patch here where it's mostly dirt and you can see things growing. It looks like he has maybe watermelon growing. Over here, it looks like it's just a little flower garden. And so I kind of like that idea. So I want to divide up my roof into some little patches like that, and I'll figure out later what I'm going to draw on my different patches. If you look in here also, it looks like maybe, I'm not sure, that it looks like they're maybe in water. Like that might be a little hot tub. This one has got like a little trellis. They're growing something, tomatoes or something that's growing up. Maybe it's strawberries, I can't tell. Something that's growing up on that trellis. Okay, so let me see. This one, I'm gonna make this my vegetable garden because it's the biggest. And so if you look at how they have little vegetables in there, I'm gonna draw, I like the watermelon. I'm gonna draw some watermelon shapes. I'm doing this with pencil now. If you're drawing with a pencil and you draw your shapes first, you can come back later and put in detail with color. You could use crayons or colored pencils. And just so I can kind of remember that they're watermelon, I'm gonna put a couple of little stripes on these. So that's my watermelon patch. And then I might come over here and maybe I have tomatoes. They're a little bit bushier. Get some leaves on those. I could even draw some tomato plants on there. So I might go back and make the vine and the leaves on the tomato plants green, and then come back in and make my red tomatoes. All right, let's see. How about this one? I like that they have a little flower patch. So this one, I'm gonna pretend I have some raised flower beds, like some boxes. And then I'm gonna come in and do my flowers. And remember, I'm a bird, I'm flying over it, so I'm looking down. So, but I could probably still see the petals, some different petals. One of the very first story times we did that we put online, we actually went out in the garden and we drew flowers. And we looked at pansies and violas that were in our pots out in the garden. All of those are on our website. If you wanna go back and look at it, if you missed any, we've been doing these every Wednesday since about the middle of March. There's a lot on there. It's fun to draw these first, and this, like a pencil, you think about it's like black and white, and then to go back and add whatever colors. These are kind of tiny. If you wanted to make it bigger, so you could make your things you're drawing bigger, you could do that. But it would be really easy to color these with colored pencils. Okay, so I've got watermelon, tomatoes, flower bed. Let's see, what else do I want? This one I just might come in and make this be like different kinds of kind of wavy grass. And I think we talked about this too when we did the Russo project, and we talked about how you can use the same color but all different shades of that color. So with the grass, If you have markers that are dark green, you might go in and make the wavy lines dark green, but then come back with a lighter green to put in some of the grass color, or even in any color that's kind of in that family. You can mix yellows in with that. You can have kind of a lime green color. I'm looking at some of the other gardens on here. Some of these have, this is kind of geometric with the squares, but some of them have little patches, little circular patches. I don't know if those are supposed to be stepping stones or things that they're growing. You can use your imagination and do whatever you want. And then if I had a rooftop garden, I would want a little place, like a little pool. I'm gonna make a little tiny swimming pool, or like a little hot tub. And maybe have some bigger plants, kind of grassier things. Anyway, you get the idea. So I would keep going, you keep drawing little things on your garden. And then, do you remember when we did the cities, when we read Iggy Peck Architect? Remember how we could go back and we could draw the side of the city building, and we talked about how a lot of times buildings look like there's a lot of, even you can see this in this picture, lots of geometric shapes, just like little rectangles, little arches, little squares. So I could come back here now, like maybe down here is my door, I could put where the front door is, and then I could come back and draw all those little details on the building. This is just an idea to get you started. You're gonna do your own, but that's just one fun thing that you could have done with this book. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.